Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. We're closing in on 200 subscribers. Love sort of the trajectory the growth of the channel is on. We're going to keep it pedaling along. Wanted to talk today about just some off-season drama, how worrisome it is for the Packers in each individual case. And you're talking about an organization that really year in and year out has done a great job throughout the years of limiting distractions, limiting drama, especially in the offseason. And it seems like a lot of it has just piled up so far since the end of last year in January and still going on now throughout the offseason. And again, it's an odd spot for the Packers to be in because typically they aren't engulfed in these situations. And there's like 3 or 4 different things they'll have to take care of before the season starts as it pertains to drama, if you want to really be blunt about it. And as a sidebar real quick, when we were talking about trades throughout the offseason and names like DK Metcalf and Cooper Kupp popped up, and you're talking about maybe a reunion with Devontae Adams, and it's not wide receiver specific what I'm getting at. But you're talking about, Green Bay moves they could make, free agency trades, and one name that was brought up is Tyreek Hill. And I was saying, yeah, he's a good wide receiver, he's a great wide receiver, but do you want all the baggage that comes along with Tyreek Hill? Like when you have all these other fires that have yet to be put out. So that was one move that just never made sense to me. It never would make sense to me. And we all know, obviously, Tyreek Hill is still with Miami, but trade rumors have sort of blossomed throughout the offseason with him. And the Packers, like I said, they have their own fires to put out. You go back to January and another frustrating year for Jaire Alexander. He plays in only 7 games. There seemed to be, I guess you could call it like a disagreement with the Packers believing Jaire was ready to play late in the year, but Jaire believing he wasn't ready to play. And so it kind of seemed like a fork in the road moment. And all offseason, dating back to January with Goody's end-of-the-year presser, really you could date back even to Jaire's, what was supposed to be his end-of-the-year chat with the media, where he just said, I don't even know if I'm going to be back here next year. And that kind of set into motion an offseason with some drama surrounding Jaire Alexander, his future in Green Bay, or if it was going to be somewhere else. And all indicators throughout the offseason, everything Goody was saying, was sending pretty much a clear message. Like, the Packers are trying to trade Jaire Alexander, and they're trying to get compensation that they deem to be right to send Jaire somewhere else. And if that doesn't happen, maybe they end up cutting him. Basically, the Packers got to a point where it was like, what we're paying Jaire Alexander is not anywhere close to what we're getting on the field. Now, when he is on the field and he's available, Jaire Alexander is still performing at a top-tier corner level. It's just availability has been the problem. When you miss 34 of the last 68 regular season games, there's going to be rightful questions about your availability. And, far be it for me to go looking in someone else's pockets at, salary and what they're making. But the Packers pretty much made that decision. Like, it's just not working. What your salary is based off what we're getting with your availability. Now there's sort of been like a 180, and Rob Domofsky of ESPN had reported like a month ago almost, I think it was late April, that the Packers could be working on sort of like a reconciliation with Jaire. And so when we talk about drama in this situation, and this is really the first fire the Packers have to put out, I am all for Jaire Alexander staying in the green and gold on a restructured deal if it is just kind of laced with heavy incentives based on snaps played, games played. But until they figure it out, it is sort of like a lingering dark cloud hanging over Green Bay's head. Like, what is going to be done with Jaire Alexander? And I think it was even like a week and a half ago. I guess it depends when you watch this video. But at time of me recording this, it was like a week and a half ago when the reports were like, oh, there should be a resolution really soon. And now we fast forward to present time, and I'm recording this on a Tuesday on May 20th, and there's still nothing on the Jaire Alexander front. And so it was kind of the first layer of many layers of drama this offseason, again, for the Packers, who typically don't have these sorts of issues. I guess, like, when we think of the Packers and drama they've had in off seasons, it usually is always revolving around aging quarterbacks who are trying to decide if they want to come back for another year or not. And we saw it with Brett Favre, and we saw it with Aaron Rodgers, and obviously two of the all-time Green Bay Packer greats. But if you want to use that word drama, yes, there was drama with both of them at the tail end of their careers when, there was constant waffling about whether or not they wanted to play, whether or not they wanted to do it in Green Bay, and we saw both move on from Green Bay. And that's pretty much the extent of, like, in my opinion, like, major offseason drama that the Packers have dealt with. And the first, fresh taste of it, and you don't want it, that the Packers got this offseason was dealing with the Jaire Alexander situation, and it still has yet to reach a resolution. And so it's going to be talked about. It's going to be like, what the heck's going on? But I'm all for Jaire being back if the contract can be restructured for 2025. And then you would go into this year sort of assuming, like, hey, even if Jaire plays all 17 regular season games and you make the playoffs and he plays in the postseason, it would probably be his last year with the Packers. But to me, based on the lack of investment at cornerback this offseason, I know they got Nate Hobbs and they used a 7th-round pick on Micah Robinson, but usually 7th-round picks, you're taking a flyer on someone. You're not taking a 7th-rounder with the intention of, like, hey, we're going to rely on this guy heavily right from the get-go. It's just not the nature of the beast. It's not reality that we live in with the National Football League. And so to me, the cornerback room looks just incredibly different with Jaire in 2025 compared to without Jaire in 2025, which is why I'm all for figuring out a restructure, making it feasible. It can be a win-win for both sides. Jaire, if you play, you're going to be rewarded. The Packers, when he's still on the field, he's really damn good. And so that's still a fire that has to be put out. I think that was the phrase I used earlier, but there's others going on too. You have, again, this is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Just wanted to talk about some of the offseason drama for the Packers, how worrisome it is. The Jaire stuff I don't think is worrisome. It's just like we've gotten to a point where we're waiting on a resolution. I would say if you want to talk about what's concerning with it, I personally, and you may differ on this, and that's completely fine, I have my doubts, and I've brought this up in videos before. I have my doubts about what that cornerback room would look like this year without Jaire, because without Jaire, you are looking at Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs as being your 1 and 2 cornerbacks in a division that has Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, Jamison Williams, Roma Dunze, Jordan Addison, like the list goes on, and that's just in your division. You also have games against Philadelphia this year with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. You also play Cincinnati, who has T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. You also play the Commanders, who have Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. Like, I'm saying these names to all of you, and then you sit back and you sort of digest it. How confident would you feel with Keyshawn and Nate Hobbs as your 1-2 punch? I love Keyshawn Nixon. Is he a true number 1 corner that can match up against, Justin Jefferson one week and then Amon-Ra St. Brown the next, and then DJ Moore, and try to slow down Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, try to limit opportunities for A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith? Like, you just look at the bulk of the schedule the Packers are facing this year, and it's a gauntlet, especially when you look at the cream of the crop for wide receivers. They, who knows what the hell the Giants are going to be. One thing we do know is they have an elite superstar to be wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. Would you rather have Jaire Alexander on Malik Neighbors or Nate Hobbs or Keyshawn Nixon? It's like, you tell me. So if the Packers can work something out with Jaire that makes financial sense for 2025, I'm all for it. The other side of the ball, you have Elgton Jenkins, and this one to me is, this will test Green Bay's sort of philosophical beliefs as an organization for how they normally go about their business. You have Elgton Jenkins, who has been an all-pro caliber left guard, and if you put him at tackle, he'd probably be an all-pro caliber tackle. And Josh Myers is gone. You bring in Aaron Banks in free agency. Aaron Banks, who has strictly played left guard in the NFL, right? Like 99.9% of his snaps he's played at left guard. And so Aaron Banks will come in and be your starting left guard. Elgton Jenkins will kick into center. And all reports this offseason have pretty much been the same, right? Like, hey, Elgton's receptive to moving to center, but now he's sitting things out in the offseason, some offseason programs, because he wants financial security, financial stability, knowing that he has 2 years left on his deal. All the guaranteed money is washed up, and he's moving to center, where and Elgton Jenkins has every right to do this. But by doing it, it does bring along a little bit of drama for the Packers, just like how they navigate it. What are they going to do to try to figure this out? So Elgton Jenkins moving to center knows, hey, I'm moving from guard to center. I've also played a little bit of tackle, in years past. And Elgton Jenkins is a smart dude. He knows playing center means typically in the NFL, centers make less than guards who make less than tackles, right? And so he knows in 2 years when he's a free agent, if he's a center still in 2 years, his deal probably won't be as lucrative as he thinks he may deserve. And so he's looking like, hey, I was your left guard for so long. Now I'm moving to center. If there is an injury at left guard, right guard, I might end up sliding back there in 2025. And then who do you put at center? Is it Jacob Monk? Like, that's a different discussion for a different day. But the point being, Elgton Jenkins wants to be paid more so as just like a hybrid offensive lineman than a center. And he has every right to expect that, every right to want to do that. Here's where it's going to test Green Bay's philosophical beliefs. The Packers typically don't do business when players turn 30 years old or older. The Packers also rarely, even with their own guys, if they draft a player, will hand out a third contract. And both will be hitting Elgton Jenkins, like both those boxes. Elgton Jenkins' current contract will expire in 2 years when he's 31 and set to turn 32. He would also be due, I believe it'd be his third deal with the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay has a history of not doing that once you turn 30. Now, where you can offer a caveat in this situation is that you have Brian Gutekunst saying this offseason, and again, this is a guy who's pretty careful with how he says things, with what he says to the media in these press conferences. And Goody has said at least once this offseason, it might have been multiple pressers, that he believes Elgton Jenkins can be an all-pro center. And it's high praise, and it's well-deserved praise for Elgton Jenkins. If Goody believes Elgton Jenkins can be an all-pro center, and he's just shifting into the role as on a full-time basis this year, he's likely talking about the years ahead, not just in 2025. And so for a guy who has 2 years left on his deal, he'll be 31, set to turn 32 when it expires. Are the Packers going to be receptive? How do the Packers handle this? Do they make an exception to the rule? Is Elgton Jenkins the exception to the rule? Where you have a player that turns 30, typically that's where Green Bay's like, we're not going to do business, we're good. And they'll go back to that draft and develop method to try to fill that void wherever it may be on the roster, on the depth chart. Or do they say, you know what, we do believe Elgton Jenkins can be an all-pro caliber center when he's 32, 33, 34, maybe even 35. And so we'll pay him handsomely. And you know what, we'll honor his request. We'll find a middle ground. We'll find a compromise on a contract where he's getting paid not as a center, but almost as like an offensive lineman. And it doesn't mean top-of-the-line tackle money or top-of-the-line guard money, but you sort of find that happy medium where Elgton Jenkins is making more than the really good centers in the NFL, but not as much as like, an all-pro tackle, like Lane Johnson of Philadelphia or Sewell in Detroit, or and what his deal could look like, things of that nature. And so that's, it is drama, and it's something the Packers are going to have to figure out. In another situation where you have a guy who was drafted by the Packers, he spent his whole career in Green Bay. What has it been? I'd have to look it up, but it feels like 8-9 years for Elgton Jenkins. I'll look it up quick. But if you can find a compromise with Elgton Jenkins on his contract going into his 7th year, you should feel pretty good about it. And with what Goody said about, hey, this guy can be an all-pro center, it didn't sound like a GM who was speaking about strictly 2025 and 2026. So Elton's looking at his situation. He's like, I got 2 years left on my deal. All the guaranteed money's gone. Still has a strong base salary, right? But he's looking at his situation, and he says, I'm now moving to center. I'm fine with that. But I want to be paid as almost like an offensive lineman more than I do just strictly a center. And so I don't blame Elgton Jenkins for sitting out right now and wanting a new deal. But again, it's something the Packers have to deal with. And then finally, the last bit in the offseason, the wide receiver spot, which is like, this isn't a Packers thing. Wide receivers are just like the prima donnas of the NFL. And I'm not saying the Packers have a bunch of those or even one of those, but when you talk about like just drama queens, drama kings, I guess, in the NFL, a lot of people, the first position they would point at is wide receiver. And Green Bay's dealt with their own issues at wide receiver this offseason. You had Josh Jacobs come out in February and say, hey, man, I think, and he spoke on multiple platforms about it. I know the one that originally surfaced was on 97.3 The Game in Milwaukee, when Josh Jacobs said, hey, I love our wide receivers. He said, we got a lot of dogs. We got a lot of great wide receivers. I just think we need a true number one bona fide star. And it's almost as if everyone washed away the first part where he was praising and lifting up the current group, and everyone just focused on, oh, Josh Jacobs says the Packers need a true number one wide receiver, and is he, taking shots at the current group? It's like, no. But Jaden Reed tweeted something kind of like his displeasures about what Josh Jacobs said and deleted it. Dontavian Wicks tweeted out the laughing emojis with a thumb down emoji, and then it all kind of, the dust settled, and Green Bay didn't, get a Devontae Adams. They didn't get a DK Metcalf or a true number one wide receiver. And instead, they dipped their toes into the waters of the draft. Matthew Golden round 1, Savion Williams in round 3. And you would think all would be fine and dandy, but no. Then a report comes out after the draft that Goody had to speak with Jaden Reed's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, to clarify Reed's status on the team. Like, Jaden Reed is a serious candidate for a year 3 breakout star. We saw glimpses of it in the first month of 2024, and then his season really, really came to a screeching halt, especially down the stretch. And I've brought it up before. It wasn't just Jaden Reed. It was really the passing game as a whole that just could not find a rhythm the last, outside of 1 or 2 spots, the last month and a half of the season, really couldn't find any consistency. And when I saw the report, like Goody having to talk to Drew Rosenhaus and just saying, hey, you know what? Jaden Reed's status on our team hasn't changed because of who we drafted and when we drafted him, receivers in round 1 and 3. Jaden Reed's still our number one guy. Like, it just feels so unnecessary and it feels forced. And you hope, we don't know, but you hope that it wasn't coming from Reed and it was instead his agent trying to show Reed, like, hey, I always got your back, like, see what I did, blah, blah, blah. Because, like, it just feels messy. It just feels unnecessary. Like, do you think the Packers drafted Matthew Golden and Savion Williams because they're like, man, Jaden Reed, we don't know about this guy? Like, I think we know at this point, 2 years in, like, he's a pretty damn good wide receiver, and you hope that maybe he can be a great wide receiver. And so that part, to me, it just, I didn't like that, how that went about, and you just hope it was the agent acting on his own. But Goody having to be like, oh, no, this doesn't change Jaden Reed's status. Like, it's just piling up more tedious work that he has to sort of tend to. The good thing is, all indicators, the Packers had their coordinators, some of their position coaches speak to the media in the last week and a half, and I forget who it was. One of the coaches had said that Jaden Reed is literally helping Matthew Golden left and right, helping him on every single play so far this offseason, and he's helping McCole Hardman, who's a veteran but coming over to Green Bay for the first time. So that's the Jaden Reed I think we've all become accustomed to seeing in these first 2 years. The wide receiver position, to me, when you talk about what's the most fascinating spot for Green Bay entering 2025, position-wise, it almost has to be wide receiver, because you're going to be missing a key piece of the puzzle in Christian Watson for a significant portion of it. You have Romeo Doubs entering a contract year. You have Reed and Wicks, who next year will be playing on contract years, and you still have yet for anyone to emerge as a number one. And so you go out and you take Matthew Golden in round 1. First time, we all know, right? You took a wide receiver first time in, however many years. 2002 was it? Javon Walker. And then you double down. You take Savion Williams, who's a wide receiver, but he's more of a hybrid player on that offense. He's just a chess piece for Matt LaFleur, and a big chess piece. And so there's just a lot of unknown with the wide receiver. I'm like, how are the snap counts going to be split up right away? Is Matthew Golden going to have an opportunity to become the number one? Is he going to get that sort of target share right out of the get-go? Because, you take a wide receiver in the first round, your intention is, hey, that's going to be our number one eventually. Like, that's what you hope it sort of manifests into. And whether that's right away or whether that's 2 years down the road, we'll have to see. But there's just so much unknown about how the mouths will be fed on a week in, week out basis. Like, it's a good problem to have if you're the Packers, that you have so many options, but you're also going to have to keep some guys happy. And you're going to have to keep some of those guys happy who have shown that they will get frustrated and upset if their role is minimized. Like, Romeo Doubs was suspended for a game last year because he just skipped 2 practices, didn't tell anyone about it. Team personnel had to show up at his residence to make sure he was okay because he was upset with his role. And so he was suspended a game for conduct detrimental to the team. Then you have Jaden Reed and Wicks this offseason laughing and throwing shade at Josh Jacobs for simply saying, I love our wide receiver group. They're awesome. They're great. I still think we just need that superstar, that bona fide number one. And, that set off a bunch of alarms that shouldn't have been set off. And then you have Reed's agent, Rosenhaus, needing to clarify Reed's status on the team with Goody. Like, get out of here with that crap. There's another layer of drama. And that, like, Jaire's issue will be settled this offseason. And, again, you would expect relatively soon, but who knows? But the drama with Jaire is he going to be in Green Bay or not? Can you work out a restructure on his contract? Is he going to be receptive to that? The Elgton Jenkins drama is, this is a dude who's been an absolute bull for you on the offensive line, a workhorse going into his 7th year, who's open to a position change based off a free agent move you made, sliding from guard to center, left guard to center to be more specific, but he wants to be paid accordingly and not as a center on his next deal. And so that's a move that you either get a deal done and you figure it out, a compromise with Elgton Jenkins this offseason, or you don't. The wide receiver drama will have to be settled in the season. Like, if we're 3-4 weeks into the season and Reed, Wicks, or Doubs, one of the three are upset because maybe Golden's getting more targets, more looks than them offensively, then we'll see it pop up again. The one thing, an overarching theme within all of this, whether it's, the financials, whether it's snap counts, whether it's, how many times you're touching the ball at wide receiver on a week in, week out basis, I will say an overarching theme in sports that can cure it all is winning. And I know it sounds very simplistic, but it to me, it's true to the core. If Green Bay comes out of the gates, for as much as some of these wide receivers might be frustrated about their usage rate, maybe heading into the year, they were probably more pissed off that they went 0-2 against the Lions last year. Truly. That they went 1-5 against the division, and if not for a blocked field goal at the last second in Chicago, would have gone 0-6 in the NFC North. If Green Bay starts 2025 and they beat Detroit at home, and then they follow that up on a short week and they beat Washington on a Thursday night, and then they head to Cleveland with a sort of a mini bye peppered in there after the Thursday night game, those issues aren't going to be brought up, at least to us, right? Like, internally, maybe there's still discussions being had. But if Green Bay can start the season 2-0 with a win over Detroit, especially in week 1, we're going to be talking about, hey, maybe this Packers team has another layer. Maybe they're taking that next step. They beat up on teams pretty much as good as them and below them last year. But then they went 0-6 combined, including the playoff loss against Minnesota, Philadelphia, and Detroit, who had the best 3 records in the NFC. So if you start this year with a bang, record-wise, I think you can at least sweep some of these issues under the rug as far as the wide receiver stuff, because I'm telling you, I would not be surprised if, the Packers start slow, or, you go 1-1 and then you lose in Cleveland week 3, and then you have to turn around and play Dallas on a Sunday night, and you're 1-2. Don't be surprised if some of these issues start to fester and start to bubble up, and we start hearing about, disgruntled wide receivers or whatever the case may be. If Elgton Jenkins doesn't have a deal worked out, but he decides, I'll play this year anyways, but I'm not happy about it. And don't be surprised to hear that brought up. Winning can cover up. Winning can mask a whole hell of a lot in sports. And so I think that'll be crucial for the Packers early on, because you're always happier when you're winning games, right, as a team. You would think. So a lot of drama this offseason. It really goes against the grain of how the Packers have typically had things present them in the offseason. It's usually aging veteran quarterbacks who still have gas in the tank, but are they going to play? Do they want to stay in Green Bay? Now it's disgruntled cornerback who hasn't been available 34 of the last 68 games. It's veteran offensive lineman who's such a key piece to the puzzle for everything up front on that offensive line that wants a new deal now because he's making a position change. And it's a wide receiver group that just added 3 more pieces, I guess, if you want to include McCole Hardman, and then, Golden and Savion Williams in the draft, and you're going to have to figure out a way to keep everyone happy, all under the same roof, with only one football to spin around off the right arm of Jordan Love. So we'll see how it works. I'm not overly worried about the Elgton Jenkins part. I just don't know how the Packers would be, and they don't have anything like set in stone. We do not sign players who are 30 years or older. We typically don't do third deals with players, even our own that we draft. The Packers would be making an exception to the rule by giving Elgton Jenkins a new deal, and I think he deserves it. I do. I mean, everything Elgton Jenkins has shown you, what has he shown you that says, hey, when he's 33, 34, I don't think he'll be a productive center? Like, nothing stands out on that front for Elgton Jenkins. So I would like to see the Packers bend that rule, be a little flexible, and get something done with Elgton Jenkins. To me, that's the biggest question mark. Like the Jaire stuff, it's it's either he's in Green Bay on a restructure or he's somewhere else. Maybe they just release him. Elgton is like kind of in limbo because he still has 2 years left on his deal. He does play damn near every game, and he plays at a very high level, at an all-pro level. And then the wide receiver stuff, you got to wait till the regular season. So we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Always, always, always appreciate all the support. We'll see you next time.